Welcome to Vitality Unlocked. I'm Dan Garner, scientist, performance coach, and Chief Innovation Officer of Vitality Blueprint. This show does one thing: convert cutting-edge science into practical strategies for high-performance health. Each episode, we take one target and run it through a simple filter. Topic, mechanisms, current state of the evidence, and your next game plan. No fluff, no gimmicks. Hey there, and welcome to episode 3 of Vitality Unlocked. In this episode, we are going to be going over building a smarter pre-workout. Now, this topic's a lot of fun because it touches a lot of people. One of the questions I get the most frequently is this pre-workout good? What do you put in your pre-workout? How do you think about this ingredient? This kind of stuff constantly comes up, and it's almost always to do with the pre-workout window. Now, I'm not surprised because the market share in the supplement industry is huge. Like, as far as pre-workouts go and energy drinks go, they take up a substantial amount of what's driving dollars into that industry. And whenever you're driving dollars into something, there's usually companies looking to maximize profit margins, and there's companies that make wild claims to try and justify those margins. My promise to you with this presentation is that we're going to go over the pre-workout ingredients and what the real science is behind them, which ones work, which ones don't. Spoiler alert, there's not a lot out there when it comes to true human evidence behind this stuff. And at the end, I'm also going to talk to you about what I recommend and how to even get the most out of your own current pre-workout. So we got a lot to discuss, but it kind of begins with the confusion out there. I'm not surprised that people send me like, is this good? Is that good? Because you see completely contraindicating stuff. Like you see ingredients that really don't work synergistically together. You see some ingredients that just like had one study on it, so it's in there. And then you'll see like one reputable brand, in quotations, has this ingredient, but the other doesn't. Why? You would think pre-workouts would have more uniformity, right? You would think if you were after strength or after strength endurance or after aerobic work or after cognition or after, you would think there'd be more uniformity between blends, but there's not. And the reason why there's not is A, the formulators either don't know science, or B, they're trying to make money off of it and not really help you, or C, some combination of A and B. Like you can see 3 very popular labels here, and you can just see massive direction differences in formulation despite similar claims and approaches. Like this company over here having over 20,000% of your B12, but then these ones not even containing it. This guy over here having magnesium, but here you're not having it. Well, all 3 of them have citrulline, but this one has 6 grams, this one has 6.5, but this one has 10. It's like, hang on a second. Who's reading what literature? Where are we at? What's the goal? Why is everything so different all the time? So what I want to teach you in this presentation, how to look at a label like this and determine, is that good for me and my current goal or not? Claims. This is where a lot of the controversy, I think, comes from, because a bottle will say maximum pumps, go longer, enhance strength performance, sprint faster, jump higher, get more girls, make more money. The labels, they're absolutely crazy. They say a lot of things, and I think that's what creates a divide. Anytime you say something so conclusively in an area of science, you're going to create a divide, because there's almost never absolutes in science, and there's certainly never like over explanations of maximum crazy skin splitting pumps doing this, and then they'll link one mechanistic cell culture study or something like that. Like there's a lot of stuff out there, and I'm sure that you've seen it, but the claims are what primarily create the divide, and then you get these 2 sides of the fence. And I consider myself a very evidence-based, science-driven, forward-thinking individual this way, but you get extreme purists in the world of science that say pre-workouts don't work. They just say pre-workouts don't work as a blanket statement, even though they're like in the purest of scientists, and they should kind of know better than to say something in such an absolutist sense. When somebody says pre-workouts don't work, again, I think that needs defining. Remember in resilience, when I was like, all right, first we need to define resilience before we actually can continue on with this presentation. That was episode 1. I think the same thing about someone says pre-workouts don't work. Okay, well, let's actually define that. So first of all, pre-workouts, This is immediately before the workout. I understand you're like, duh, but that's an important thing to point out. A pre-workout suggests that you take this ingredient and it is going to create an acute performance effect. Acute being the key word. So when you're looking at studies like this, methods matter. All right. So just reading here. 1 hour after supplement consumption, participants perform 6 sets of upper body work and lower body work exercises to failure at 80% of previously established 1 RMs. Okay, that's study number 1. Study number 2. In a randomized placebo-controlled crossover study, 10 adult men completed moderate and severe intensity cycling exercises on days 6 and 7 of a 7-day supplementation period of arginine and citrulline and placebo across that period. 2 studies, 2 good studies, nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with citrulline, but methods frickin' matter, okay? 1 study was supplementation prior to exercise. The rest was this like loading dose study across 6 to 7 days. That's not fair. That's not pre-workout, okay? And that's where a ton of confusion starts to happen is you look at a study and, first of all, nobody looks at the studies, unfortunately. So I hope they watch some of my videos, but they will look at a bottle and they will see this product increases training volume 12%, and it'll link to some study or something. But they'll never go look at the study and realize that it wasn't actually a pre-workout ingredient. Something that you have to do for 7 days is not a pre-workout ingredient. That is by definition, okay? Going back, what are we even talking about? How are we defining this thing? It is not before the workout. Methods of studies really, really, really matter. So go back to that, okay? To kind of dissect when someone who's extremely evidence-based, or maybe it's totally opposite. Maybe I'm just seeing the other side of the spectrum is also, there might just be a total bro at the gym that never reads ratios that says, nah, none of that stuff works. And has literally never looked at a study ever. But this type of person says pre-workouts don't work. First, we defined pre-workout has to be immediately before without any other fluff going on. But then how are we going to define work? Well, work means a subset of exercise performance. So when someone says pre-workouts don't work, it needs to be prior to, and then you also need to say, well, what does work mean? What are you talking about? How are you saying it doesn't work? Umbrella statement across everything. I like the confidence. I like how much I dislike it. So that's because I like when people dig their heels in things. But it is crazy to just say something doesn't work across the board, okay, regardless of context. When we're defining work, it needs to be associated to exercise performance, and it needs to be associated to an improvement in performance. These are really the only ways you can improve performance. These are really just the characteristics of exercise performance: maximum strength, strength endurance, power output, aerobic endurance, and cognitive function. If you are touching one or a few of these with a pre-workout ingredient and it had a statistically significant improvement in those areas, then your definition of work worked, okay? But it's important to know the goal that you're after, because if you are taking a product that supports maximum strength but your goal is aerobic endurance, you're taking an ingredient that works but doesn't work for you. Okay, so these things, this work, it needs to represent improve, and it needs to represent immediately improve. Work is the exercise adaptation or performance output that we want, and pre-workout reflects the idea that is immediately before. Just because it's in a pre-workout product doesn't mean that it's in a pre-workout ingredient. Okay, just because it's in a product doesn't mean that it's a pre-workout ingredient. We could go back up to those labels previous, and there's good ingredients in there that aren't pre-workout. They're not. Okay? And that's a very important distinction. Creatine being one of the most popular. Okay? Creatine is not a pre-workout product. It's not. And there's many, many, many reasons and studies for that. This is an excellent study from 2022. It took males, it ran them through getting to maximum muscular voluntary contraction all the way to failure. If you had creatine or not pre-workout, it did not matter. Okay? There was no differences between creatine and placebo. None. Why? Because creatine requires saturation. The benefit from creatine comes from muscular saturation. So if you're taking between 3 to 5 grams of creatine, typical muscular saturation is going to occur in adult by around 30 days. So you can run a low dose for 30 days, keep on rocking it out, but that saturation, the benefits that you're getting from creatine are many. They're many. It is an exercise performance supplement, but not a pre-workout supplement. It will support strength. It will support lean mass. It will support anaerobic endurance. It will support cognition. It supports many, 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 many things. But its benefits come from loading creatine into the body, loading creatine into the musculature, and offering phosphocreatine as these little side projects that your body can use for immediate sources of ATP when it needs it, so you can go harder, longer. Creatine's unbelievably good, but it's not pre-workout. You don't load your entire body with creatine in the pre-workout window, okay? So it opens up the window for you to like, wow, creatine is very beneficial. It's way cheaper to buy it in isolation than to keep getting this $80 pre-workout product, okay? So getting things in isolation can save your money a lot too, especially if they don't even belong in the pre-workout window. Beta-alanine. Exact same thing, you guys. Exact same thing. This is 12 young females in this study. And what happened here is they are doing Wingate tests, and they're taking carbs, or they're taking carbs plus beta-alanine. Once again, no differences between beta-alanine and placebo. Why? Because beta-alanine is also one of those loading ingredients. You need to load it over time. Beta-alanine is going to convert to carnosine into the body, which improves buffering capacity of fatigue. Particularly, beta-alanine is good at those longer, grittier efforts, greater than 60 seconds of high-intensity work. So like that real anaerobic lactic type activity, not your maximum power and low efforts or your super long aerobic endurance effort, but it really shines in that anaerobic lactic zone. And that's a loading effort. So beta-alanine and creatine, you're going to see them in almost every single pre-workout, but they're not pre-workout ingredients. You can have them at any point in the day because it's the saturation that provides the benefit, not the timing. Saturation, not timing. System support also does not equal acute performance support. This is another thing that happens in the industry a lot. And it's funny when you sit back and think about it. Okay, so just to quote this study here, despite their fundamental roles in anabolic pathways, only the intake of thiamine-derived substances showed some positive effects on exercise performance and fatigue. So this is looking at B vitamins and their role in exercise performance. You guys remember when I brought this up in the Nutrition is Not a Belief System episode with a deep dive into micronutrients? So B vitamins are required in so many different areas here. You can just see get amino acids in here, we require a host of B vitamins. To convert carbohydrates into acetyl-CoA, like you're getting B1, B2, B3, B5, there's B vitamins involved in so many different components of the citric acid cycle so that you can improve ATP. But more is not better. It's like when you have 7 to 20,000% of B vitamins constantly coming in the pre-workout window. Do you think that's going to provide more ATP production if you weren't deficient? If you're not deficient in these things, you don't need bolus doses of them. It's weird. People know this in the world of testosterone, or at least in my circles. When you look at the research on magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D, if you are low in any one of those ingredients, it is associated with reduced testosterone levels. If you get to adequate status in any one of those nutrients, it will increase your testosterone. If you try to increase your status beyond adequate in zinc, vitamin D, or magnesium, you will not increase your testosterone more. More is not better. Improvements in hormones are going to happen when you go from deficient to normal. But you're not just going to hey, if I just keep having zinc, I'm just going to keep having more testosterone. No, it doesn't work like that. Your body has what it needs. There's no more rate limiting effects stopping it. So now it's going to build the testosterone that it's going to build within your genetics and your diet and your lifestyle allows. That's what's going to form the peak amount of testosterone there. But the same thing with ATP production. Like, you can't just take 20,000% of B vitamins pre-workout in someone who's already sufficient and think that they're going to get 20,000% more ATP. Like, it's completely insane. So people walking around here completely sufficient in these things, but taking massive doses of it, kind of just to make their pee yellow. Maybe it's a marketing thing. Yeah, I took a crazy pre-workout. My pee was like highlighter fluid in the toilet. If that's your goal, hey, we have to define work, right? We're defining work. If that's what you want to work, then you have accomplished that goal, my friend. But the reality is that work needs defining, and it needs defining immediately. You can really just increase strength, enhance strength endurance, improve power output, promote aerobic endurance, or enhance cognitive and neurological function. These are the 5 things that we're after. So system support of minerals that are associated to ATP, if you're already sufficient, it's not really going to help. Or things that take a longer period of time, like creatine and beta-alanine, not really going to help. And methods matter in studies. So I'm already kind of like, this is how you're supposed to look at things. Look at research, look at them over time so that you can look at a label and know exactly what's up. Now, with all of that said, and all of those things importantly discussed, I want to talk to you about my favorite pre-workout ingredients that have solid science that aren't caffeine. All right? Caffeine is the king of kings of kings of kings. Okay? You run into a wall that looks like this. When you try to find a study, when we go back to define work and all the areas of pre-workout performance that we want to support, caffeine does all of them. Caffeine supports cognition, supports aerobic endurance, it supports power output, it supports strength endurance, it supports absolute strength, it supports all of these things. Caffeine is like the pre-workout gold. That's what it is. These studies and tons more just send caffeine home. So I actually thought it would be more beneficial for me to talk about the things that aren't caffeine that support performance, because I think everybody already knows that caffeine supports performance, but this whole presentation would have been about caffeine. It would have been in every single section and it would have got redundant. That's how powerful caffeine is. It's really powerful. It hits all of those areas of performance, and guess what? It also actually reduces pain perception. So on top of performing more, you're reducing pain perception so you can go further in different ways. So caffeine is an animal. I cannot state that enough. That needs to be interwoven through everything else that I'm about to say. And the quality of literature on caffeine against everything else I'm about to say is also unmatched. It's like one of those things where you have first place and then second place. It's not like first, second. It is first, and then there's a steep fall to second. Nothing beats caffeine. Nothing beats coffee. Those things are absolutely performance enhancing drugs, for real. But let's dive into each of the exercise areas of performance that can work and see what we can find. Maximum strength, you're actually not going to come up with a whole lot besides citrulline. Citrulline will support maximum strength, and citrulline does this through a pathway where you have citrulline first, arginine second, nitric oxide third. There's all those little intermediates there, but primarily it's a citrulline increases levels of arginine in the body, which increase nitric oxide, which support blood flow and contraction velocity. So the mechanism of citrulline is very well known, and it's one of those ones that's at the top, okay? And improving strength acutely is a tall task. You have a human body in front of you, and you want to improve their strength pre-workout. If you're not stimming them out with caffeine, then you better have a heck of a mechanism behind you. And citrulline does that, supports that. So this is a good study here. 12 men and women judokas, crossover double-blind study. They're taking 250 milligram per kilogram citrulline malate plus a little bit of carbohydrates or a placebo. And the citrulline malate group, they actually perform better in wing gait as well as grip strength. But I want to just highlight the grip strength component in this. But improving grip strength in an acute sense is very powerful. all by itself. So we don't even need to impress upon that more. But doing it in judokas, I think, is even more powerful. Anybody who knows judo knows that their grip is like iron. They have an iron grip. So I kind of see that. I compare that to trying to improve the strength of a power lifter pre-workout. He's already strong. He's already powerful. He's already very well trained. He's been doing this thing a while. So if you can improve his strength pre-workout, then you've done a very good job. Grip strength for a judoka is very akin to that. Their grip is wild. So supporting grip strength 60 minutes before exercise is a very, very good finding. And you can see the results are trending very, very, very clear. That's really all you're going to find for maximum strength. It's a very difficult one to move, and rightfully so. But then you can get into strength endurance. Strength endurance is more like your hypertrophy work. This is your ability to maintain like a 70% for a longer period of time, 70% one rep max, or 75, 80%. You're doing more of your volume work to get size and strength instead of just trying to get an acute effect on only strength. But our friend citrulline malate comes up once again, and it comes up for the same reason. It's supporting the arginine nitric oxide pathway, and you can see here a meta-analysis of 8 studies. And it's important to point out that like when you're running the math across 137 participants, 40 to 60 minutes prior to exercise, 6 to 8 grams of citrulline malate, it's on average improving by 3 reps. Guys, that's a lot of work. Improving 3 reps in a set is a lot of work, okay? Or improving training performance volume by 6.4%. This is a lot, especially when you add that up over time. That is not a small number at all, especially when you smooth it out over 137 participants across 8 studies and statistically break it down. So very impressive findings for both maximum strength and strength endurance for citrulline malate. Citrulline malate, thumbs up. Known mechanism, human data. And that's another trap you don't want to get caught in. Holy crap. I listen to some podcasts and stuff and have some colleagues in the industry. And you'll think that what they're talking about is just ironclad. Like you can follow every single word, but it's a mechanism. And they cannot point you to any human data. It's so important to have human data and actually repeatable, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials. And ideally, like meta-analysis, systematic reviews of these before you start talking about them. But there's people out there who will memorize a mechanism. And because they can talk to you about the fine calcium ion channels and fine nitric oxide synthase activity that's taking place enzymatically and the catalyst of where, and then the blood flow incoming and the fatigue byproducts, like you can hang on to every single word. And you would think that the human evidence on that is tremendous. But the true human evidence on pre-workout ingredients is actually not, or as far as that get my thumbs up, is not that high. There's not that many of them relative to what you're going to hear on podcasts. There's cool things. There's things maybe coming down the pipe. But actual human evidence and not just mechanisms or cell culture studies or animal studies, please be so careful. As a listener of mine, please be so careful of where people are deriving their fancy language from. This one's pretty cool though. Okay, capsaicin. And there's also the capsaicin. The capsaicin's actually one that's a little bit more tolerable for people, but capsaicin, this is actually the ingredient found in chilies. So this is a part of like spicy food ingredients, totally under people's radar, by the way. Meta-analysis of 7 studies. Okay, this actually operates through the TRPV1 receptor pathway, and this pathway does 2 things. It enhances calcium handling so that you have harder contraction, muscular contraction velocity, but it also reduces pain perception. So that TRPV1 pathway activated through capsaicin, that's improving muscular performance and reducing pain perception. So it's unsurprising that it's in the strength endurance category, right? A part of strength endurance is pain perception. How long can you go? If pain increases, pain's a warning signal. Our body's like, yo, chill, as you're getting closer and closer to failure. But when you have a reduced pain perception activated by a known TRPV1 pathway, you have something that, unsurprisingly, you're supporting muscular performance and pain perception. It's unsurprising that across a meta-analysis, you have an ergogenic effect, which is a performance-enhancing effect for people maybe unfamiliar with that word. You have an ergogenic effect across these studies. And what's cool is that it's even found across sets. So I wanted to make that kind of extra note here. It's found across sets because sometimes you'll see improved strength endurance in a single set. So let's say you'll drive someone to failure, and then you'll see how far they can go in their next round. What's their time it takes them to get to fatigue in a single set. And then that's it. And citrulline can come out on top. There's other things that come out on top. But that's also true. You can have an improvement, a statistically significant improvement in strength endurance with only a one set work. But to be able to repeat that for set 1, for set 2, for set 3, that's different, and that's fantastic. I wanted to point that out. Up to 3 sets, capsaicin will continue to improve strength endurance and offset pain perception. And unsurprisingly as well, it reduces RPE, so ratings of perceived exertion, because you're not in as much pain and you have better muscular contractile velocity, which means your strength endurance is improving. Okay? So far, for maximal strength and strength endurance, there's really just 2 on the map, citrulline and capsaicin. Both of these things are fantastic. 1 for maximal strength and then 2 for strength endurance. Power performance. Now we're getting into nitrates. So nitrates are a pretty cool one. Nitrates also improve nitric oxide, but they do it through a different pathway. So citrulline goes citrulline, arginine, nitric oxide, whereas the nitrates, they go nitrate, nitrite, nitric oxide synthase enzyme, nitric oxide. So they do a very similar, you can see they have like similar destinations, but they operate through different pathways. But they do improve muscular contractile efficiency, which actually improves ATP efficiency per unit of force, which is really cool. They enhance blood flow to fast twitch muscle fibers, and they optimize calcium handling during high intensity efforts. So anytime you're optimizing calcium handling, you are improving muscular contraction. That calcium is required every time you contract a muscle. And when you're improving handling of that, in addition to blood flow, in addition to fast twitch muscle fiber, efficiency of ATP production, among many of these other things, you get something that supports power. So here's a good study on 13 trained cyclists. And I'll just let the graph do the talking here. You're looking at pre-placebo and post-placebo, looking around the same thing. But then we've got pre-NO3 and post-NO3. All right, taking this in terms of power output, the difference is not close. You're enhancing power max and you're enhancing relative power utilizing nitrates. And this is actually this BRJ here, that's beetroot juice. So beetroot juice was consumed prior to exercise and resulted in an acute power output performance improvement. Taurine, probably not on a lot of people's radar. But taurine, actually, this is a pretty cool study. Examination looking at 16 studies looking at taurine, multiple different exercise modes. So they're looking at aerobic and anaerobic here, but I bolded these here, getting statistically significant improvements in both the vertical jump and the counter movement jump. Reflections of power production. So taurine's pretty cool because it also enhances calcium handling, which improves that muscular contraction velocity. But taurine also reduces oxidative stress. So it's in this kind of way where it's going to support your go, but also help you go a little bit longer and help you in the recovery component of things too, by playing a role in oxidative stress that these other things that we're talking about just simply don't play. But improvement in vertical jump, improvement in counter movement jump, but no other improvements. So that's important to point out. Like, it's looking at a lot of things, but it does support power, which, if you're defining work, what are we looking at? This is supporting it. Side note, as a coach, me just telling you something that I know works. If you have an athlete who's struggling with cramps, taurine is just like the elixir for that. For those of you who don't know that, try it. People can mess around, and usually it's some combination of sodium, potassium, magnesium, some form of hydration status thing that they got going on, or deconditioning, honestly. There's a lot that can go into cramps, but if somebody feels like they tried a lot of things and they haven't found a solution yet, taurine's phenomenal at reducing cramps. Phenomenal at reducing cramps. And then you get a power output benefit on top of that. So excellent approach there. 1 gram. That's the most common dose used across this study. But when I'm using it for people reducing cramps, I do use 3 grams. So there's nothing toxic about taking 3 grams. So that is what I personally recommend. But I want to point out that that's what I personally recommend and not what was in this data. Aerobic endurance. Okay. Once upon a time, what was it? Maybe 4 years ago, I ran a marathon, and I used up all of my love for aerobic activity during that time. I ran a marathon. I actually was doing no cardio previous, and then I set a goal. I was like, all right, bucket list. I'm going to run a full marathon in 6 months, and I knocked it out. I went from zero cardio to full marathon in 6 months, and that was a pretty wild time. Going from bodybuilding training to full marathon to finishing the marathon. I learned a lot from it. I got a lot from it. It was an amazing experience, but I think I've used up all my aerobic endurance love. I used it all up during that last 6 months. I'm still waiting to go back and love it again. So I'm basically what I'm saying is doing this section for you guys. I'm not doing this section for me. In the world of aerobic endurance, sodium bicarbonate, probably unsurprising for many of you guys in the game here. Sodium bicarbonate, this is one that increases blood and extracellular pH buffering capacity. So essentially, hydrogen ions, these things drive up during states of fatigue. These hydrogen ions drive more fatigue, which lead to aerobic endurance performance reductions or even failure and time to exhaustion. Sodium bicarbonate offsets that. So it just improves your ability to continue to buffer that, which you can think of just when I say buffer, just think about neutralize. You're neutralizing these fatigue metabolites as they come up so that you can keep going longer. Sodium bicarbonate does this reliably. It does it in a really good way. So you can see the stats here, and I highly recommend, again, in the video description, I link the link the slides of every presentation that I do in the video description, and I highly recommend always going and checking them out for more information on any of this stuff. But the coach's note that I'll say on sodium bicarbonate here is that, there you go. A coach's note on sodium bicarbonate is it causes GI distress for a decent amount of people, actually. So there's a lot of people that get away with it, but there's enough people where it causes a problem. You can actually get something called PR lotion that you can put on top of you. And so you bypass the gastrointestinal system altogether. Well, a lot of people like that. So PR lotion is basically something that you can put on your skin that has the same effect on fatigue, but you can avoid all the gastric distress from it. Okay, so just a coach's tip, I've used that a bunch actually with people who have gastrointestinal issues. And lots of times people in the aerobic endurance game, by nature, they have gastrointestinal issues because they're consuming all these goos and drinks and bars during long events. But also just the process of being in a prolonged aerobic state increases lipopolysaccharides in the gut, increases intestinal permeability. Like these are really known things. Gastrointestinal distress is a part of the game for a lot of endurance folks from a few different angles. The lipopolysaccharides, the intestinal permeability, but also just the consuming that amount of stuff to stay fueled on the road. So when you can put something on your skin for offsetting fatigue in a reliable way and avoid the gut, that's always a pretty good thing. Rhodiola rosea. This is one of my favorites for a lot of reasons, but maybe we'll talk about a lot of those other reasons down the road. But a rhodiola is actually in the aerobic endurance category. A lot of people don't know that, but it is. It's quite effective this way. It improves stress and fatigue management through the HPA axis, but it also improves mitochondrial function. So you're getting something that supports aerobic endurance reliably. You could just see in this paper here, rhodiola rosea increasing time to exhaustion, but also increasing VO2 peak. Like this is a powerful exercise agent. Many people just use it to offset stress. I use that a lot as well in my coaching practice. But make no mistake about it, it is a performance ingredient and a pre-workout, by definition, pre-workout performance ingredient. So very cool stuff for rhodiola rosea in the world of both health and performance. Cognitive performance, last but not least. Okay, we got a lot of cool ingredients down the road here, or that we've gone on this journey so far. Maybe a few more down the road. But for cognitive performance, tyrosine is right there with the best of them. Now, this was a study with 19 healthy men and women, and they were taking 150 milligrams per kilogram of tyrosine prior to this. Now, the scientific term for that dose is a spicy meatball. That is a spicy meatball. Okay, I'm usually kicking around 90 to 95 kilo these days. And so that's putting me over 13 grams of tyrosine. That is a large dose, okay? A spicy meatball. For me personally, and I'm very familiar with all of this stuff and quite tolerant to it as well, I can feel tyrosine at 1 gram, but it's like I can feel it lightly at 1 gram. I can certainly feel it at 2 grams. That's when things start turning on. At 3 grams is like, that's my like, all right, I don't need more than this. I'm there, I'm with you, I'm buzzed, I'm alert, let's go. That's at 3 grams. So this study, driving people up to 13, well, will be driving me up to 13. That's a lot. That's a lot. So I'm just going to, as this series goes on, you guys are going to see me talk about coaching experience in addition to what we're looking at here on the paper. But this is consumed 30 minutes before doing the accuracy and speed of information processing. Okay. They're doing cognitive tests here, and you're taking a large dose. And how tyrosine essentially works here is they're providing you a reserve for being able to maintain states of alertness over longer periods of time. So things like accuracy and speed of information processing, those happen a lot more efficiently when you have reserves of dopamine and norepinephrine. Tyrosine is a precursor for both of those things. So when you have a lot of reserve for the two things you need to maintain cognitive performance in these environments, it allows you to essentially not run out of gas. You can think about when your muscles use carbs for exercise fuel, your muscles are able to go harder longer because there's this reservoir of carbs readily available, good to go, to use as fuel to maintain the activity. Tyrosine works very similar that way for cognition. You're giving your body this large reservoir of a precursor that it needs to keep making the chemicals to continue to perform in that aroused state. So that is more unique to dopamine and norepinephrine, and tyrosine shines in those environments for accuracy and speed of information processing. Now, alpha GPC is also in this world, and so is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine actually has a little bit more research on it, but alpha GPC, they're both very similar things. Okay, alpha GPC and any kind of these choline deliverers, what you're doing is you're boosting brain choline and brain acetylcholine, and this sharpens the prefrontal cortical ability to process information and to have inhibition control. So you're able to focus on something, and basically inhibition control is you're limiting distractions that are available to you so you continue to focus on the task and be more accurate with it, which is very important to do when you're doing something like this, the Stroop score. The Stroop test. So the Stroop test, this is one of those tests, I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's when, let's say, the color of the word is red, but the word itself in letters is green. And you're supposed to say the color of the word and not actually read the word of the letter. So you'd say red, even though it says green. It's difficult to even explain. It puts me in my brain in a pretzel to even explain it. I did it in Seattle a little while back, and I was like, what is going on here? Because it really tricks your mind. But when you're boosting brain choline, when you're boosting brain acetylcholine, you're improving inhibition control, you're improving your ability to focus. That's what you get results like this, okay? Stroop scores, when you're looking at, and this is high dose versus low dose, so 630 milligrams of alpha GPC or 315 milligrams of alpha GPC. The Stroop score in these participants for the high dose was better than placebo, but the Stroop score for the low dose was also better than placebo. But Stroop speed improved with the high dose. So with a high dose of alpha GPC, boosting brain choline, boosting brain acetylcholine, and all of the things associated to that prefrontal cortical attention and response inhibition, you're getting improved scores and speed. That's impressive. That is impressive. And a Stroop, which is a very validated, excellent cognition test. So we've got a lot of cool ingredients to work with, but some of these ingredients work better together. There are synergistic effects that happen. So we've gone over all the areas that which you can improve performance, but what works better together? Caffeine and theanine is phenomenal. I know I said I wasn't really going to talk about caffeine anymore, but it works better with theanine. It really does. This is a cool study on 12 elite wrestlers, double-blind crossover. This is exactly what we want to see. Looking at caffeine, 3 milligrams per kilogram, which is modest in the literature. Sometimes you see wild things. Sometimes you see spicy meatballs. Theanine at the exact same dose. And then when you're so it's either caffeine alone, theanine alone, or caffeine and theanine. That's basically how this study broke down. And the combination of caffeine and theanine is superior. It beat caffeine alone, which is difficult to do. All right. Usually when you put caffeine plus something versus caffeine alone, usually caffeine alone is still just as good as the caffeine plus something. That happens like every time. Caffeine's like the ultimate gold mine of pre-workout research, but it also is just like a total bummer. Like, don't put anything against it because it's just going to win every single time. But this was an awesome finding. And this, again, I'm always just pointing to like one study when there's many others out there. But taking caffeine and theanine together improves performance and reduces anxiety. And just as a coach, I can just tell you what it does is smooth the curves. That's like the easiest way to think about it. Because sometimes caffeine, at the doses required to improve performance, they're actually really high and people don't like it. You could see there's 6 milligram per kilogram, 8 milligram. I've seen 12 milligram per kilogram. Like, you can see some wild doses of caffeine in the research. And to actually acutely improve performance, sometimes it takes a freaking jolt like that. And it's not just like, hey, caffeine made me feel a little bit more wakeful. That's kind of like improvement of performance only by means of reducing withdrawal symptoms, only by means of caffeine dependence. Like that can improve performance within an individual, but that's because they've kind of just built I'll say dug this own hole for themselves. But to actually meaningfully improve acute performance, beyond just getting out of withdrawal symptoms, beyond just that slight wakefulness, that can require quite a jolt. And people don't always like the way I can describe it. Just, it feels like right angles. Like, you're just, even if you're trying to focus, if you're trying to go after something, like it's very jagged. But when you add theanine to it, you have all of that neuromuscular activity, all that neurological activity, all that stimulation, all of it. You get everything from caffeine that you want. But now, instead of right angles, it's got nice curves to it. You've got more smoothness to the feeling. It reduces anxiety. It reduces jitters. It reduces shaking. And so you're essentially getting the good out of caffeine without the bad. When you talk to people about, hey, I can't take caffeine. Why? Oh, I get jittery. I get crazy. I actually can't focus on things. Theanine is that GABA offset. It helps really offset and round out the curves. I can't recommend this combination enough. This is something I do daily. And I would recommend that you guys do this as well. Theanine is phenomenally combined with caffeine, and they are absolutely better together than they are alone. Unsurprisingly, because of some of the physiology and biochemistry we talked about so far, nitrates plus arginine works. Why? Because one is nitrite, nitric oxide, and the other one is the citrulline, arginine, nitric oxide. But when you're combining nitrates and arginine, you're just going through both pathways at the same time. And you're getting it in just a good way, where you have immediately available nitric oxide activity, but then also more of a reservoir, more of oxygen dependent and not oxygen dependent, because they actually operate in different ways that depend upon different levels of oxygen. So it's not just different pathways, it's different outcomes. There's a reason why you saw citrulline in strength and strength endurance, but then you saw nitrates in aerobic endurance. There's a lot of oxygen activity that happens there. And then when you do both at the same time, that's when you start to get improved average power, improved lactate handling, and improved agility. All right. Excellent. So these are the two synergistic ones that you can really hang your hat on. Those things really, really, really work. And you're trying to cover many things at the same time. So what does the evidence have to say for pre-workout stacks? What are the absolute essentials and doses? Well, this goes back to the beginning of the podcast. Hey, Dan, how do I know if this is a good pre-workout? Well, number one, is it actually acutely improved performance? And number two, define work. What do you actually want out of it? So what I'm about to show you are the different ways you can tackle each goal that are going to work immediately acute and are going to work relative to the context of the goal that you're bringing to the situation. Resistance training, 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of caffeine, a gram of taurine, citrulline, some sodium bicarbonate. This resistance training, this is a combination of strength and strength endurance. I'm combining them both at the same time. If you want strength and strength endurance, these are good things to have on the label. Aerobic training stack, carbohydrates, episode for another day. We'll be going into carbs a lot. Nitrates or citrulline, or both. Caffeine, electrolytes with an asterisk because you want to be careful with electrolytes if you're also going to have sodium bicarbonate in it. And then rhodiola rosea. Cognitive performance, caffeine, alpha-GPC, and theanine. Now, you guys have access to these slides, so you're going to get all the doses, all the ingredients, all the everything. But this is really where it's at. You're looking at resistance training, you're getting all the effects of caffeine, you're getting the power and the calcium handling from taurine and reduced oxidative stress, you're getting the blood flow and contraction velocity from citrulline, you're getting the pH buffering from the sodium bicarbonate. Like, this is through different mechanisms. That's another important point too. I'm not putting these together to waste your money and stack ingredients on top of each other that do the same thing. You don't really want to do that. Aerobic, this is also, we're providing fuel with the carbs. We're getting the blood flow and the oxygen uptake and these things from the nitric oxide. Caffeine does everything. Pain perception, aerobic endurance is everything. Electrolytes, sodium bicarbonate, rhodiola rosea with our stress offset, like cognition. These are all different pathways with validated ingredients and are known to acutely improve performance immediately prior to the session without loading. Do I still recommend beta-alanine and creatine? Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I recommend, but I will never call them a pre-workout. Ever. I'll never, ever call them a pre-workout because they're simply not. But if we do want to get more out of our pre-workout, and this is the promise that I made to you in the beginning, we need to actually get more out of our caffeine. That's like really the biggest thing that we want to get more out of. And in this conversation, tolerance matters. Tolerance is a thing. Okay, you are, despite what you want to do, you are going to want to take a break from caffeine from time to time. This is an excellent study that actually really pointed toward a 30-hour abstinence period for resetting tolerance for cognition with caffeine. So this is done with mood and reaction time. And caffeine only at 250 milligrams, which for some might seem like a lot, but in the research actually isn't that much. But you can just see when you were abstained from caffeine, what happens relative to reaction time significantly lower compared to placebo. Now, caffeine improves it regardless, but if you abstain from it, the difference is significant. So a reset period for cognition for caffeine, kicking around that 30-hour mark. And then when you're looking at physical tolerance as well, you're going to go on a longer period of time. This is really what it's all about. And I would encourage you to look at these studies that I've put on here. But here's the gist of it. Caffeine tolerance builds because chronic caffeine use blocks adenosine long enough that the brain upregulates those receptors and blunts central nervous system drive. A short break resensitizes the system. This is very fast for cognition. While the performance bump depends on the slower rebound of corticospinal excitability and excitation contraction coupling, which is electrolyte handling, which tends to lag for about a week. So that is physical versus cognitive. This is really what I recommend. More research will continue to come out and validate more precision in this. But if you want to reset cognitive performance, you're going to want to take about a 30-hour break. That is good. That process happens faster for the mechanistic reasons I explained previous. But the actual physical performance one has more of a lag. And this is going to take about a week and sometimes up to 12 days. And when you look at the withdrawal symptoms noted in those studies that I pointed you towards a few slides ago, this is the journey of what it's going to look like. Days 1 to 3, if you're a regular caffeine user, day 1 to 3, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms of headaches, fatigue, irritability, and difficulty concentrating. Days 4 to 6, less irritable and tired than before, but still feeling sluggish. And then days 7 to 12, this is when things largely subside and you feel like you got a clean slate. So taking time off caffeine isn't fun. This is this 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 12. These aren't my numbers. This is from the literature. This is quite well established in withdrawal symptoms. It's not the funnest thing to do, but I believe it is a requirement. If you want the absolute most out of your pre-workout, you want the most out of your performance. Cognition, about 30 hours, whereas your physical, it can be up to 12 days, but usually a week for a lot of people. What I recommend during this time is during this full caffeine reset. This is what I recommend my people do, and this is what I've done in the past as well. I'll take a couple of grams of tyrosine with some alpha GPC in the morning for some caffeine-free cognitive upregulation. So if I'm at work or if I'm whatever I'm doing, I'm still elevated. I'm not completely sluggish. I find it offsets the symptoms from days 1 to 3 significantly. I feel like my cognition, you feel the lag of without caffeine for sure, but this definitely helps offset that. Throughout the day, rhodiola rosea, this enhances cognition, and it also helps reduce or improve stress tolerance. So we've got our cognitive enhancement from the morning for norepinephrine, dopamine, acetylcholine, brain choline in the morning for our caffeine-free little cognitive boost. And throughout the day, we're more resilient to stress, which is important during times of withdrawal, but then this also helps support our energy levels throughout the day. And then at night, theanine and magnesium threonate can actually both offset withdrawal-based headaches. So they offset headaches, but then they both also support good night's sleep, which is important for the entire reset tolerance protocol. So I recommend doing this. I don't think you need this at all if you're doing the 30-hour break for cognition. You just take that time off. But if you're doing the 1 week, I think this is an excellent thing to do. I've used it with dozens and dozens of people in the past, and it's a good way to build a bridge so that you don't just hit the floor, but you can still feel good while resetting your resensitization to caffeine at the same time. But I'll leave you with this. Pre-workouts don't not work. They work exactly as the science says they should. And they hit even harder and cleaner when you respect tolerance and build the regular resets back into your plan. These things work, and the select amount of ingredients that I offered here are the ones with the best literature, and the context of the goals at which you put them in are going to determine the success that you're going to get out of these things and how much money you ultimately spend on these things and how you look at labels to determine if you even want these things. Thanks for watching.